And welcome back to Creative Cooking. I am your happy host, Dr. Helen, and I am here to share some amazing meals with you today. If you thought the other episodes were good, wait till you try these. This is absolutely spectacular. Now, we are going to do some foods, make some foods that are really effective at lowering your blood sugars, your blood pressure, and your cholesterol. So make sure you speak with your doctor to make sure that you're able to do it, because you may need to make some adjustments in your medications, okay? Now, that being said, let's get started on this delicious spinach artichoke soup. Soup's on. So here we go. 9 ounces of fresh organic spinach, 15 ounces of artichoke in water, 6 garlic cloves minced, 1 medium onion finely chopped, a tablespoon of nutritional yeast flakes. We're also going to put in 2.5 cups of our vegetable broth, a teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves, 1 tablespoon of non-GMO cornstarch, and 1/4 cup of water. And then we'll use some unbleached, unrefined salt to taste. And we'll use a little fresh thyme to garnish. Now, let's get started on this. This is the fun part. Now, I'm going to turn my heat on my pot so that it can start heating up. And I like to do it over medium heat because I'm going to start sauteing my garlic and my onions. You know how we do it, okay? So we're going to start this time, instead of water, I'm going to start with my vegetable broth. And I'm going to just put a little bit in there to allow myself to have a medium to saute our onions and garlic in. Now, I like to use these onions because the onions are prebiotics, and you know what probiotics, and some of you I'm sure know what prebiotics are. But basically, the probiotics are good bacteria that your gut needs to work properly. And then the prebiotics are really the foods that the good bacteria like to eat. So we're giving them some prebiotics too, okay? Because that keeps our gut nice and healthy. So I'm going to stir this around, and I like to stir it around so that it gets a little translucent and it starts to release its flavors into the broth. Onions and garlic are just amazing and spectacular. There are people who are not able to eat onions and garlic, and I really feel bad about that, but I think that might be a gut issue, so you might want to get that checked out. But this is an awesome way to feed the gut both good bacteria and what they want to eat, because we have all of this good stuff that's going to feed it in a way that nobody has fed it before. Okay, so as this gets into a little bit of heat, or as the heat gets onto it so that it starts to become translucent, I'm going to start with getting my artichoke ready. Now, I get the artichoke in water and not oil. And sometimes I will save the broth from the artichoke to make up my broth. And I would typically use a non-meat source, not chicken is one of my favorites, not chicken, not beef, kind of bouillon cube, and then make your broth from that using water. But sometimes I'll use the broth from the artichoke water because it's already flavored with the artichoke to make the broth, and just adds a little depth of flavor to that. And so as I'm getting all of my onions and garlic sauteed in there together, I'm going to start to, with my hands or with my spoon, just kind of mash my artichoke because I want them to be smaller pieces. And it just makes it easier to heat. Now, this is a step that I just add in the interest of time. You don't really have to do this because you're going to, if you put it in your high-speed blender, it'll do it for you. But this will kind of help this artichoke to heat up a bit faster so that we can eat it a little quicker. I am all about eating. I am a foodie. Yes, indeed. So here we go. Just smashing it, smashing it, smashing it. Now my onions look like they're good enough and ready to accept my artichoke. So I'm going to put the artichoke in here. and saute it in with the onions and garlic. Hear that sizzle? Now, if this were olive oil in here and it was sizzling like that, and then it starts to have a little black smoke, then you know that what the temperature that you're using is too high for the oil. But it actually starts to release toxins when that black smoke comes. And that's not a problem that you have when you're using broth, because there's not oil. It's actually just the chicken flavorings that have been artificially made up from vegetables. So this is really good, okay? Next, I'm going to put in a bit of salt. Take this, okay? I'm going to put in my nutritional yeast flakes, and then I'm going to put in my broth here, and I'm going to slowly pour the broth in. As I mix it in. And then I have some fresh thyme that I'm going to add to that. I remember the first time I made this, some friends had come to visit from North Carolina, and I really didn't know what to make. I was kind of at a loss as to what I was going to cook for them. And I realized I had some artichoke and I had some fresh spinach, and I decided to make this up with the fresh thyme, and they absolutely loved it. And I know you will too. That's artichoke spinach dip. There's all these different kinds of things that use artichoke. And then fresh artichoke, I use that sometimes and boil it in some water with some seasonings in there, and we can just sit there and eat the artichoke right off of the stems. It's so delicious. So this is a great dish to make. Now, after I do this, it's been mixed together very well. I'm going to put it in my high-speed blender and allow it to just mix together so that I can kind of puree it a little bit and leave a little bit, some chunks behind. And then we'll thicken it a bit, okay? So I'll put my top on. Oop, there we go. Be careful and make sure your top is securely fastened. As I feel like I'm on an airplane. Make sure your seats are securely fastened. All righty. Now we have our soup. I'm going to put it back in, and you can see some nice flecks in there. And I'll drop my spinach inside because I want my spinach to be in larger pieces. And the spinach just needs to wilt. So you don't need the spinach in there in the heat very long, because otherwise it'll turn out to be a lot browner, and we kind of want it to be bright green. Okay. Now, as that wilts in there and becomes nice and happy with the artichoke, then we can start plating it and then tasting it. And I like to garnish this with, I like to kind of repeat the flavors in it in my garnish. So since I have thyme in here, I'm going to garnish it with fresh thyme because it just gives it a nice little appearance. And if you want, you can kind of put another color, maybe some cherry tomatoes on top to kind of put a pop of color in your presentation, because when you're eating more healthfully, presentation is everything, because people automatically believe that it can't be delicious if it's healthy. So you want to present it well so that people are interested in consuming the product. And that typically is a good thing because it's going to be delicious. Okay, now here we go. The spinach is just starting to wilt now, breaking down. And then we're going to use our bowl to plate. And I'd like to choose a bowl that's kind of a nice color with it. And then here we go. Got to do my thickening agent. And my water is here. Going to do a little bit of water with my agent here. And this is just going to thicken it up a little bit. And I like to do my cornstarch separately because I find that when you put it in, sometimes when it's hot, it doesn't mix very well and you get little white spots in there. So I'm going to just thicken it outside of that. Here we go. All righty. Now this is good stuff here. All right, it's got a nice little texture to it with the spinach. And then as I plate it, actually I'm going to use my ladle to plate it. We're just going to put it in our nice bowl. Oh, it's so pretty. You know, with these bright green spinach leaves in here, it just makes it so gorgeous. It's so delicious. Oh my goodness. All righty. Look at that. And then I can do that last bit right there. How delicious is that? Okay, so that will just garnish with a couple of fresh sprigs of thyme. And there we have it, a delicious spinach artichoke soup. Now, our next soup is tomato pepper soup. Here are the ingredients. 6 organic tomatoes quartered, 1 container of cherry tomatoes, 2 organic yellow peppers, remove the seeds and the veins, and 2 organic red peppers. We're going to remove the seeds and veins from those as well. We're going to use 2 cups of not chicken bouillon cubes. It comes in a low sodium variety, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast flakes, 6 garlic cloves, finely chopped, and 3 stalks of fresh herb. That can be basil, that can be thyme, rosemary, cilantro, even parsley to just round off the flavor. And then we're going to just use salt to taste. Usually we won't have to use too much salt because the broth already has some sodium in it, so we won't have to repeat that. So in this recipe, we do not have salt. Now, because I've already roasted the vegetables and they're a little cool, I'm going to just heat them up in our pan. When you roast them, what you'll do is you will put in all of the vegetables and put them in a large pan. You're going to heat the oven at 400 to just kind of broil them or to roast them for about 20 minutes. And instead of using olive oil on them, you're going to use some broth. Use some of that broth to give it something to relax in as it's roasting. I'm not sure if you can relax while you're roasting, but it's a vegetable, so I think they can handle the heat. Okay, so I am just heating this through. These are just regular tomatoes with some cherry tomatoes. Now, the first time I made this dish was years ago, as a matter of fact, and being a mom of 2 and a wife, I had to cook before I went to work. So in the morning, before I hopped in the shower, I roasted my vegetables, put them in the oven, went upstairs, got dressed, came back down, put it in the high-speed blender, and boom, my soup was ready for when I got home. And that was aside from having to make the lunch for the girls. So I had to make something quick. So if you're out there like me and you need to make something quick, then this is a really good one for you to do. Now we're going to take some of our fresh herbs here. So I'm going to put in some thyme and some rosemary, and I'll probably take it off of the stems. Just like that, just taking them to add to this delicious meal. Because the stalks of the rosemary is a little firm, a little woody, so I don't want the woody parts of it in there. And I'm going to just heat it through. And I'm not cooking because these are already roasted. So I'm just going to put them through. And then now I am going to put it in my high-speed blender. And then I'm going to just process it with some of my bouillon, my broth that I've already made. I'm going to process it in there. And I tell you, sometimes what's really fun is making up new ways of doing things. And that's something that I do in the kitchen all the time. And the one thing that I do when I do that is I'm like praying, God, please help this be good. God, please help this be good. And I say it just like that, please help it be good. Okay, so we're pouring some broth in here. And then I'm going to put my nutritional yeast flakes, and I'm going to put my garlic cloves in it. Right, so that's going to give it that flavor. Now I'm going to put my top on securely. And then I'm going to turn on my blender. Now, you can puree this so that it's just pureed smoothly, or you can leave it chunky, and I've done both. So if you want to leave it just chunky, you can just pulse it. I did kind of a combination of both. And there you have some delicious tomato soup. Let me pour it into here so you can see what it looks like. See, I left some chunks in there, and I left some flavor in there with those chunky tomatoes and some chunks of peppers and chunks of herbs in there. And that's what it looks like, and it's absolutely delicious. And because you can't taste it, I'm going to do it for you. Now, okay. See, when you pray, God answers your prayers. This is delicious. Nice, delicious. The parsley kind of adds a little brightness to it, and the rosemary and the thyme. Absolutely delicious. We're going to have to get to our next one, too. We're going to do our third and final soup for this episode, a sweet potato sage soup. I just hate when it's over because I just enjoy this so much. But sweet potato sage soup, let me tell you those ingredients. 1 large sweet potato, 4 large garlic cloves, 1 cup of coconut milk, 1 not chicken bouillon cube, 2 cups of water, 1 tablespoon of pure maple syrup, and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. We're going to also use 3 tablespoons of fresh sage and water to the desired consistency if we need more, depending on what you want it to look like. And 1 cup will be slowly added, and then we'll just salt to taste. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with our sweet potatoes, roasting them about 400 or 425 degrees. And it usually takes about 25 to 30 minutes to roast the sweet potatoes. Once your sweet potatoes are done, you're going to take them over and put them in your high-speed blender. Now, I use these sweet potatoes because I like the idea of having this beta carotene that's not only good for your vision, but the sweet potatoes are also good for cancer, for its cancer fighting properties. It has a lot of what's called carotenoids in it, which is a type of antioxidant. And so that is really yummy for my tummy. And then I have fresh sage, antiviral, it's antifungal, antibacterial. It's really delicious and adds a really nice flavor. And then I have some garlic to kind of round it out with some coconut milk. So I'm going to put my sweet potatoes in my high-speed blender. They're already kind of tender. Okay, and then I'm going to put a little bit of broth in there. I'm going to put in my coconut milk, my fresh sage, garlic, there we go, a couple more just because I love garlic. Then we're going to put in our cinnamon and then our maple syrup, just to add a little bit of sweetness to it. Okay, then I'm going to add more of this based on how I want the consistency to be. All right, securely put on your top and then make it go. Now this is a pureed soup. That smells so good. You know, there are about 3.5 cups in here. And if I'm going to share a cup with each one of my family members, I'm going to put it up to 4 cups and then mix that in. And then here we go. So I figure everybody gets a cup. There's 4 of us, so we'll do a cup for each, and we're going to pour it in. Look at that nice smooth consistency. Yes, yes, yes. And then, because we said that presentation is everything, we're going to garnish it with some fresh thyme. How's that? Now, when you are trying to eat more healthfully, it's important to build the flavor in the food. So just to make sure that the flavor has been adequately built up in this sweet potato sage soup, I'm going to taste it for you because I know that you would like to taste it, but you're not here with me. I'd like to invite you to come taste it sometime, but right now I'm going to do it myself. All righty. Smooth